So, right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to week 3 of Regenerative Leadership. uh, Glad to have you here. And we have a very, very, very special guest this morning, or this evening, or this afternoon, depending on where you are. And that's Liz Ndindi, who is going to be talking to us about her project. And we're going to be discussing a little bit about what she is doing, where she is, what she's doing, and most importantly, how she has reached the state of the project as it is now, making some connections to the work we're doing here in the course, because she actually was in this course last year. So, that said, as an introduction, Liz, thank you so very much for joining us. And let's get going. So, for the first question is, what exactly is the project you're doing? What's it all about? And why did you choose to do this project?
Um, the project I'm doing is about leadership. It's about strengthening the capacity of leaders in the regenerative space. So why I ended up in this with this project was actually as a result of being in this course, as it would happen. And I joined the course with the intent of having more impact in the work I'm doing in the space of rock climbing. And also, I needed to understand more about how to practically apply regenerative leadership in my work. So, part of the project, actually, the project that I came up with was one that I was not expecting. I was expecting something like really with huge impact in my community. But the more and more I thought about it, I realized that for us to have impact in the community, we need to partner with different organizations who have regenerative capacity or regenerative thinking, and
Mhm,
that we ourselves, an organization, needed to have that. But then, how do we get to a space where we can say, as an organization, that we have strong regenerative capacity?
mhm,
Is to look at ourselves as the individuals within the organization and see our level of comprehension of and understanding of the generative leadership and also of its applicability. Then it dawned on me that the people in my space don't have this knowledge. I have this knowledge, but they
mhm,
don't.
mhm,
So it trickled down to the point where it ended up with me. And the project then ended up being a training, which I would use what I've learned. I would take it and apply what I've learned and share it with others and help them understand and share with this vision. And then as a team, we can keep moving forward and sharing it with the people we are working with. And in that sense, we're able to accomplish the impact that we were looking for. So I ended up um, doing this training in the course of last year after we finished the course, and it went well. It was received very well by the people at the office. And
good.
now we are in a space where we are working with others to develop capacity strengthening um, framework or projects, which now can target more and more people, but working
Mhm,
with a team and with people who understand and share with a bigger vision.
good. So tell us that's great to know. So tell us where you are and what the project is about.
I'm in Kenya. I'm joining you from Nairobi, Kenya.
Okay.
My background is in construction, but my passion found me rock climbing. And I felt I am impacting people through rock climbing as a tool for change. And how can I use it better and in more impactfully, as I mentioned, in terms of the training people in leadership from a personal level, from a consciousness level, you might say that for them to be able to comprehend and own their own journeys and then be able to do that even on organizational level. So
Right.
one of the projects that we are working on in the space of personal development and organizational development is using rock climbing as a hub for regenerative leadership. And what this project is about is an immersive retreat for leaders, where leaders will be able to come and congregate and sort of disconnect from the boardrooms. And as we climb, using climbing as a metaphor for leadership, we'll
Mhm.
be able to have what I would call generative conversations, and have the people, through the experiences that they're having, be able to draw lessons from leadership as they do this. And even as we connect that with the experience um, of climbing in itself, which is itself a real powerful metaphor for leadership and personal
Mhm.
growth. Um, and use that as a way to creatively get them connected to their vision on a personal level, and comprehend now how their visions then impact their spaces.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Good. So, Everson, do you have any questions at this time?
No, it's okay.
Okay. And just for Jason's benefit, we have a guest speaker this morning, Liz Lindy, who is actually a former student of the course and who's actually sharing her experiences with creating a regenerative leadership project in Kenya, in Nairobi. And that's the later we'll have the recording, obviously, to share with everybody. But in the meantime, so how many people have you actually worked with who have come to do the climbing, and what has been their experience, and have you had any feedback from them?
The the response we've received when people come climbing, it's always like it's not what they expected,
Uh-huh.
right? They come for the physical aspect of it, to connect with the physical part of it, but what they get is actually a mental space that they were not expecting.
Hmm.
They are put in circumstances which force them to face their fears and challenge them to accept their strengths, and also, set targets that they would not have perceived before.
Mm.
So it also creates an interesting perspective as to how people sort of relax and connect with the outdoors simply by being outside, and
Mm.
that profoundness that does in sort of making you feel like you're part of something bigger,
Right.
and really appreciate the little that we do still have to enjoy as far as the environment is concerned. So the amazing aspect of it, even when we've had teams coming to climb, is an appreciation of others and the
Hmm.
part they consciously or unconsciously play in the success of the team,
Hmm.
um, and rediscovering or sort of facing strengths that you never knew you had, for example. Yeah, so
Right.
it's actually a very amazing meditative tool as well. We've had responses from people saying, all right, when I was climbing, I was present, I was in the
Hmm.
moment, my mind was devoid of, the worries of bills and deadlines and the like.
Hmm.
So you have to be very present in what you're doing and very aware of what you're doing. And you're also very aware of the risks and the consequences of what you're doing. In a way, um, circumstances in our daily life don't expose us to that.
Right. It's fantastic. So you can actually suspend everything, to be absolutely in the moment. And obviously, it is a situation of potentially of life and death if you get distracted. And not just for you, it's a risk for others. So there is a whole, as you say, a metaphor there of leadership and team building, and focus. And all of this, actually, you mentioned earlier when we were talking before we started, that this helped you to connect to your own purpose. Can you tell us a little about your transition from where you were to what this did to you, and how that shifted your purpose?
Oh my, do you have the time?
Well, we have
Okay.
3 minutes more.
Um, it was very profound. I mean, that exercise that we did for the action plan,
Hmm.
the leadership development action plan, really forced me to face myself
Hmm.
and my strengths, my weaknesses as well.
That was your rock climbing.
Yes, it was my rock climbing. This course was my rock climbing, to be honest. And um, just putting it like into practice right now, and all the things that even we discussed during our one-to-one chats,
Hmm.
I have seen the effect they have had also on me, and how my growth has been as a leader. More importantly, for the particular project that I took away with me from this course, and the
Hmm.
model I was able to make out of it in a way that I was able to visualize and conceptualize all the frameworks and tools that you gave us and make it
Hmm.
work in my
Right.
situation has been very profound, in the sense that even my tone, I would say, has changed.
Hmm.
And even in presenting our challenges and our opportunities, the language, I'm very conscious of the language I'm using. I'm very
Oh, good.
conscious of making sure that everybody in the office is heard and is present, like, you know, really putting the lessons into practice. And then, as you said it, as we discussed it during the lessons and during the one-on-one, once your consciousness, once your being is present to what you need, where you need to be, then the actions that follow are seamless.
Mm.
You don't even have to force them. And the
The results
partners,
come. Hmm.
and when you're talking with the partners, they also get it. And many people also are buying into the vision, because they can connect with you on that human level.
Right.
So my approach has really changed in a positive way, and in a way that I had hoped I would when I was joining the course. So thanks to you, John, for
Yeah.
what you do.
Well, I think it's thanks to those people who believe enough, because what I've offered are only a few tools and skills, but I certainly can't do the work for anybody else. So the fact that people have run with this, adapted it, used it in their own context for their own purposes, that's the value of this work. In itself, it's just an abstraction. So it's great to see it coming to life, and that's why I emphasize so much the value of watching that Majora Carta video that we continue to watch, because it is transformative, and now I can see you
Yeah.
repeating or replicating in your context things that she shared with us now so many years ago, that these concepts are still, or principles are still as true today as ever before, and that they will continue to be so. And so I'm glad to have that confirmation and affirmation that we're on the right track, that we are finding ways to help people transform themselves. That is to, as you said, to redefine themselves in order to redesign what they do. So that's wonderful. So any final thoughts before we let you go?
Oh, yes. Once you mentioned Majora, something came back to me, because her story really inspired me as well. And
Hmm.
the other thing that changed for me is how I view things. I used to think I'm a systems thinker, but I found that I really wasn't, maybe in word, but
Hmm.
now in action. So
Right.
for the project, what we are doing is not only interacting with many people, bringing many stakeholders on board who are, concerned with the areas that we are working on, also seeking to learn from others who are doing or have done what you're doing and are knowledgeable in the areas that we are moving into. We are
Okay.
working with people in the mental health space, so talking with people who are in the mental health space and what is needed by
Mm.
the youth, um, talking with people like yourself who are strong in regenerative leadership, to be able to know that we are doing the right thing,
Mm.
and also looking at the three P's: the people, place, and prosperity, ensuring that we engage with the local community, that the program allows the people who come for it to engage and appreciate the local dynamics and promote the local economies, the local
Mm.
businesses, and employ and empower the youth in the local communities.
Mhm.
So having a project that is not just for the one leader who has come
Right.
for that training, but in effect, permeates and affects the people in our environment.
Mm. Good. So you actually are taking it to the triple top line, the idea of
Oh,
how
yep, that's
how
the way.
everybody and everything benefits
Oh,
from the work that
yes.
we do. And of course, that's very gratifying when you see people coming to your project and wanting to be a part of it, and also empowering young people to actually create lives of purpose for themselves, and to help prosperity in your local community. And clearly, if you have international clients, people are going back, or people from other places going back to their local places, and also hopefully becoming transformative leaders. So all of these are wonderful consequences of the work you're doing. So all I can say is, well, thank you for sharing and for being with us. And I hope we keep in touch. I'd really like to see how you keep on unpacking and developing the project and seeing the impact that you have. And maybe it's time for you to have your own TED Talk so that we can bring that TED Talk into the course as something updated.
And
Okay.
keeping it small and learning as we grow.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we are doing. So
Scaling
thank
up.
you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Great. All right. Well, have a wonderful weekend with your family. And again, thank you for being with us.
All right. Bye.
So let's move on. So Everson, how did that impact you? Any insights? Any comments?
Of course, first of all, even Liz already go, I would like to thank her for her insight, and I am practically inspired by her works. And she was in the construction um
Industry, yeah.
industry, and now working as a regenerative leader, and that inspired me a lot. And since, as I said before in this course, I am also working with I'm also trying to impact young generation by teaching them leadership and entrepreneurship, mainly in the high school community. And this is practically a very difficult work, mainly when you're working with people that have other concerns, like they they are vulnerable people facing different economics and financial problems.
Right.
And most of the time they are trying to resolve this problem like individually, because they think that they are their problems but not others' problem. But trying to make them knows understand that trying um to resolve the problem by groups or for the community can have a bigger impact and a lasting impact is a very difficult thing. But
Sure.
yeah, and that I think her insight let me know that this is a very difficult work, but this is something that we have to keep like doing, fighting, because we need to fight for the community, fight for the environment and so forth.
Sure. Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts about that. Hi, Joe. Good to see you. We've just had a guest speaker from Kenya who's just finished telling us about her project in Kenya, in Nairobi. And we were sort of just reflecting on what she shared. And Emerson brought up some interesting points about the challenges of working in his space where he is. And one of this going back to the framework and to the process, and this is what we're talking about today, about the importance of working first with people who are like-minded. So building your own effectiveness by working with one, two, or three people first before you try and go up against a difficult environment or people who will be resistant to the whatever it is that you're proposing. So, a question to you, Everson: do you have that small group of people that you're working with who think like you and who are willing to go further than before in terms of leadership or regenerative leadership? That's a question for you.
Yes, I must say it's not like solid yet, because
Sure.
I didn't like consciously really think with having a small community before, like
Hmm.
scale it. But I can say that with my team, because the program that we created is I'm not the only founder. I have two other co-founder who trust in the same thing with me, like changing the life of others, creating impact, creating community, and so on. And also we have another staff, like we call them coach, because they are the one who lead the training with the
Okay.
high school student. And I can say, yeah, we got this small community, even though we did it unconsciously, because we didn't think, first of all, that we should have this little community first and then scale it. But I can say that we got it.
All right. Good. Yeah. So thinking about the framework about how you create your own model, the model with that integrity and the values. So all these principles are well developed in yourself before you scale up and try to have a bigger impact. Otherwise, people tend to contaminate the integrity of the work that you want to do, and things begin to dissolve, and your effectiveness goes away, and the impact does not grow in the direction it should grow. And all of these are the challenges of having nurturing something new and small and allowing it to grow organically in such a way that it becomes highly impactful. And as it scales up, it retains that integrity. And that's a real challenge. So anyway,
Yes.
that's part of the work this morning. And Jason, are you with us? All right. So today we're talking about these other tools and frameworks, things that complement the regenerative leadership framework. And one of the things I wanted to get into today is, well, what are you thinking about um, how you're going to go about designing your project? And that's the conversation today, particularly about generative dialogue and what that looks like. All right, so Jason says he can't speak. So fine, well, just listen in. And Joe, you raised your hand. What did you want to say?
All right. Thank you. First of all, apologies. I'm a little late because I was counting on that. And now I think 30 minutes from now, according to the usual schedule. So my mistake.
That's all right.
And with regards to the conversation, I think even though I just found it somewhere, uh, even though I haven't been able to comprehend the whole conversation, but I do get a point. I would give an example where I was trying to. I do have a plan where I wanted to establish like a social enterprise where I would reach out to groups of women, equip them with skills and resources in small scale business management, and then continue growing. Maybe reach out to groups of women, 17 or 20, with 20 or 17 members or so, and then continue growing from there on. However, I realized that there were quite a lot of challenges with regards to other people or other wishes coming on board. So it was sort of a general plan, like a general overview. So it had so many challenges. So now I'm trying to revise that plan and then come up with that's small, something like a pilot project. Maybe try with a group of women with comprising of about 3 or 4 members, and then keep growing from there on. So yeah, that's just one point that I wanted to point out. I'm not sure
Sure.
whether it made any sense or not.
Yes. And I think previous experience is really important. I mean, we learn from what worked and what didn't work. And from that experience, we can explore new ideas and new ways of doing things. And the framework and the tools we're sharing this morning are just part of that. Oh, okay, now I understand why it went wrong, or why it didn't work, or what did work. So, what did I do right? So, part of the whole intent or the purpose of this course is to help you clarify the things that are working for you and why, what things are not working for you and why, and to make the change so that you can become more impactful, more effective, and obviously making sure that you're connecting to your personal sense of purpose and mission, and helping others do the same. I always hear a little bit of noise when I hear the word training, because training is what we do with dogs. But with people, we engage them in learning together. So there are concepts that or terms of vocabulary, language that we use, which we don't even think about what it means. And everything we know, all our human systems are really not doing very well. So when we talk about education, schools are not doing well, universities are not doing well, governments are not doing well, health systems or economic systems. It seems that we've created all these systems that do not help people become happy, to flourish, to prosper, to live lives of meaning and joy and peace and happiness. And so therefore, we need to figure out something different. And we can't do that until we go back to the drawing board and say, well, why isn't it working? And as we've discussed, from my research and my belief, and this may not be the belief of everybody, it all comes back to how we see the world, and therefore we impact the world based on how we see it. If we are paranoid because we are afraid that people are going to try and take away what we have, we're going to have a response to the world which will be based on fear or aggression or conflict. And we create all this competition and conflict based on our beliefs about the world and reality. And we seem to have a great difficulty in going back inwards into who am I really? And in the end, inside, we're all the same, living very different lives, but in the end, everybody wants to connect with other people. Everybody wants to feel loved and to feel love for others. We want to care about ourselves and to be cared for. We want to care about the things that surround us. But we seem to have transformed all of that desire into things which are negative, and which affect us negatively and affect other people negatively. So the starting point is the willingness to acknowledge this internal operating system isn't working very well. And we need to take an honest look at ourselves and say, well, I'm complicit. I'm not regenerative 100%. I consume things. I have an impact on the planet. I don't do as much as I could. But I'm sure that if I acknowledge that and start there from my own consciousness, I can begin to shift towards a more evolutionary approach to everything I do and everything that I am. And helping other people to recognize that is far beyond training. This is inviting people to recognize that we are all in this journey and nobody's better than anybody else. We're all doing our best where we are. And if we acknowledge that, then we can have that tone, which is a shift in tone towards a more positive tone about what we consider to be leadership. And that's one of the things I brought up before. So I wanted to go through a few of these concepts just to emphasize a few of the things that are really, really important, and then maybe discuss them. So at any time, just raise your hand or jump in so we can talk about it. And let me just put this on. Oh, let me share my screen. That would help. So the presentation for today, which is recorded, obviously, is this one. And we're not going to go through everything, but some of these I've shared before. Obviously, one of the things in the discussion forum, and I encourage you to go back and participate in the forum because this is a requirement for the course certificate. So I'm recording this to make sure the message gets out. We saw about Majora and how Majora has affected so many people in such positive ways towards doing exactly what Joe, you were mentioning was not easy, or Everson, how to actually get it done, basing themselves on your story. So what is your story? And how does your story become a shared story in such a way that it brings people into something that you can share that aligns with their purpose? And of course, we talked about tone before, about moving the tone. And Liz, this morning in her chat, she was talking about how her tone has changed so that she's far more positive and how she's actually speaking to people from a completely different place. And that was interesting. And these are little frameworks about organizations or community. I'm not going to go through them. These are self-explanatory, so I'm not going to waste time on that. But how, if we empower people in the public space rather than just inform them of what we're doing or training them, you're going to get a much better result long term. But this is where I wanted to focus. And this is Otto Scharmer's work on the four fields of conversation or dialogue. And what I want to help you do is to see what you do when you have conversation with others, where you are situating yourself in dialogue, because conversation is the work. Having an idea, having a goal is all wonderful, but the work is the quality of the conversations that we have with others. That's the secret. That's the recipe for becoming regenerative or anything else. Unfortunately, very often we don't know how to engage dialogue, suspending the thinking of the past, or understanding that everything is a whole situation, that reality is one thing. It's not a bunch of different things. It's not a fragmented thing. And unfortunately, we as individuals find it very hard to see reality as one whole entity. And we tend to fragment reality into different parts. So if I'm an economist, I see reality from a financial perspective. If I'm an artist, I see it only from an artistic perspective. And I'm an educator, I only see kids or students. And we tend to find it very hard to integrate the whole of reality into one. And so when we talk about the triple bottom line and the triple top line, how do we integrate the three legs of the stool into our vision, into our understanding of systems? If we can't do that, we can't have real conversations. We can only have conversations about the parts. Well, how do we make more money? How do we save the poor? How do we help the sick? How do we help the kids? But all of that tends to leave out very important consequences and implications. So if you look at the framework here, you'll see that we have these four quadrants, which is not a coincidence. We seem to work very often in four quadrants. When we begin a conversation with people, we tend to have this type of conversation and see if you situate yourself in this situation. When we meet a group of people for the first time, we are very tactful, we're diplomatic, we talk nice, we don't actually confront. We are just listening in. We're not sharing, we're not committing, we're very careful about what we talk about. And that's how we begin, particularly when we're coming from this thinking from the past and this thinking of fragmentation. We're not coming in with our whole hearts and minds. But from this, beneath the horizontal line, as we get into conversations, very soon it becomes very clear that people come from very different perspectives. They have very different interests. They have things that they must do to represent their stakeholders. So very soon, if the agenda is not shared, we start conflicting. We start having a conversation that's adversarial. You see it in politics, in business, in industry, in education, wherever you go. If we don't suspend the thinking of the past, if we can't integrate reality, we cannot actually connect with others. We only come in based on our self-interest. This is my vision. And that's where I go back to the idea of training. I'm here because I know and you don't. I'm going to tell you what to do and how to do it. And then go off and then become successful. And it's not how it works. This does not work that way. So if we can get beyond this way of connecting with others in order to engage in conversations, if we can get into this kind of space where we begin to see the whole person and the whole situation, we can begin to reflect as we speak with each other. And we can begin to actually get into a mode of inquiry, of questioning reality, of saying, your idea was interesting. Tell me more. Rather than just waiting for you to stop and then I'm going to tell you my thing, and then you wait for me to stop and then you tell me your thing. We actually come together and say, hey, wait a minute, that was interesting. Tell me more about that. And you're going to feel when you do that, you're beginning to develop some empathy for the other person or people. There's something coming from the emotions. This is not just the mental clash and competition, or even the anger in the emotions. There's suddenly a coming together where we can begin to see reality as something we share, not as something where we compete for resources, or we compete for money, or we compete for ideas. We actually can create a new idea together rather than you having to accept my idea or I have to accept your idea, otherwise there's going to be trouble. That is the beginning of the possibility of regeneration or regenerative design or leadership or whatever you want to call it. Architecture, construction, agriculture. Once we get into this mind frame, this mind space, more possibilities emerge. And they don't have to come from you, they come from us. And this is not enough today. In order to really be transformative, we have to get into this. Can we come together? And again, this is something that Liz, our guest speaker this morning, was talking about, that suddenly in her work and her experience, people have found that they can suspend everything that is distracting them so that they can be in the present, in the moment, right now, in this, for example, this unique moment that will never be repeated again. And here is the origin of potential, of possibility, of opportunity, of really creating something entirely new and designing a solution that we've never thought about before, where people are so engaged in finding something together that really creative ideas can emerge. And that goes beyond what we call transconceptual dynamics in the framework. We bring in imagination and creativity and the emotions, and we can do this joyfully together, collaborating, not competing, not trying to get what I can out of this and take it back. It's actually our project. And this is my message to you, and hopefully I'm not training you, I'm engaging a conversation about how will you try to bring people to your conversations where you can truly ask just the question, why are we here and what is important to us all at this time right now? And if you can engage that conversation without an agenda, without a list of instructions, without a 5-year goal, but actually just asking the question, what do we want to get out of this situation today? And then building the project out of the conversation, I can guarantee that that project is going to become a prototype and a model of your leadership, which you can then replicate anywhere, in any context, with any kind of person. Because if you can engage multiple stakeholders, whether they're young, old, affluent, poor, racially different, whether they're a different gender, if you can develop your model of dialogue with people, everything else will fall into place. You'll create the systems, you create the spreadsheets, the 5-year plan, the Gantt chart, the project management, everything else are just rational tools to help you explain or visualize what the heart knows and what our consciousness is aware of. As soon as we turn the thing around, as Einstein said, imagination should be the master and reason the servant. Unfortunately, we've turned this around and reason has become the master and imagination the servant. And yet imagination is where all the good ideas come from. So with that said, any comments or questions? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Reactions, Everson?
Yes. Just a question. Do does the generative dialogue concern like stakeholders, like partners or beneficiaries? Can we still use this kind of conversation with the beneficiaries also?
Okay, great. This is a great question. Everybody is part of your conversation. That's why I think last week I was saying at your design table, you need to bring in everybody that's going to be impacted by the decisions you make. That includes the unborn. So they might not be there physically, but in your decisions, you need to consider the impacts of your decisions and your actions for those who have not yet been born, because they will be affected. You need to bring in the trees and the animals to your table. How are they going to be affected by your decisions? Your beneficiaries are even closer because they are humans. So, but the beneficiaries are also the unborn and the natural environment and your community. And you may not be directly in contact with them, and they may not be at the table with you, but they will be part of the conversation. That's what becomes generative dialogue with regenerative potential. Because if you don't, you will not consider the implications of your decisions on everything, short term and long term. And that's why that idea of backcasting in quadrant 4 in the framework thinks about what would you like to see together the results of your work in 200 years' time. That really actually demolishes the need to report, your quarterly findings in every 3 months, or your report card at the end of the year, or whatever it is that keeps us on this short-term thinking. We need to get system thinking and long-term thinking as part of our dialogue, even if we have to make decisions about what we do right now and tomorrow, because there are people who are suffering. We can't start thinking 200 years into the future when people are suffering. Something has to be done about that too. So there's emergency and there's urgency for some people's situations that needs to be resolved right away. But it also needs to be done in such a way that those people, once the emergency is resolved, can begin to become part of the conversation about how they want to live, not just survive, but how they want to thrive and flourish. Because if not, we continue to create this dependency where they always need a savior to come in with the money, with the water, with the food, and they can no longer have personal identity as individuals or a community because those identities have been shattered. This is one of the greatest negative impacts of things that were apparently good, like NAFTA in Central America and the Caribbean, where this idea of free trade allowed American corporations, especially, to go into South America, like Motorola, and build factories where everybody went to work. And of course, as soon as it wasn't profitable, those people left, and the people who were there, the locals, actually then realized that they'd lost the skills that actually had allowed them to live lives of purpose and prosperity before. And because of endemic wars and conflict, people have been displaced. So all sorts of things have been done with the idea of creating prosperity, which have been completely artificial. And that has not helped. So today there is enough wealth in the world for everybody to live a life of ease, a comfortable life. However, we have not found a way to share wealth in such a way that people can build lives of purpose and meaning and prosperity, where everybody can go to school or everybody can get health care, everybody can actually get work or create their own business or do the things that they were born to do, whether it's to be an artist or a business person or an educator or whatever it is, because we just can't seem to create the systems that will make that possible. So, Everson, in your conversations uh, about empowering young people, you can't come with the solution. You need to generate the solution together. That's what I'm talking about when I say when you develop your project is your project. I don't want to be involved in what it is that you want to do or why, because that is yours. I can help with the process. And if you don't trust the process, the results will be limited. So how do you engage young people to help you understand what they want and how to help them do what they want in the ways that they want to do them, not in the ways that you think they should be doing them? It's a complete shift in how we engage each other in doing things, and that's where we talk about multiple stakeholder engagement, which is serious business. And there are people who are doing it better than us. So, and when we go to iterative observation, also in that quadrant 2 in the framework, how do people go and listen and imitate people who are doing things better than we are, and to bring in the best of what they do that is relevant to our work and incorporate it? There is no doubt that artists steal from each other. Economic ideas are taken from other people and then implemented, but they're adapted to the context. And that's what we all should be doing. Are we seeing the models that are out there and adapting them in such a way that they strengthen your effectiveness and your impact? Joe, any thoughts, any comments?
All right. It's quite an interesting conversation, and considering that it's quite challenging seeing the reality from another person's perspective.
Yep.
And in this case, so with regards to the projects, like you pointed out, we may come with our own assumptions that maybe the community who would like to help wants this or that. And in some cases, they may just accept the help, even if it's not something that they are looking forward to having. So,
Right.
yeah, it's quite challenging. And then it also presents another challenge that, let's say, whether it's an initiative or project, may end up being totally different from what you would have envisioned in the first
Sure.
place.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's quite important and yet very challenging at the same time.
It certainly is. And that's why we talk about that regenerative leadership is inversely proportional to ego. It's very hard for us to let go of the things we think we know and to want to communicate them. And also, we can be very hesitant. We can be very, what's the word? Well, hesitant. We can feel quite fearful of actually going to somebody else that you want to help and say, I don't know what your problem is. I don't know how to solve it, but let's have a conversation about it, and together we can figure it out. Does that make sense? We tend to say, I have the solution. I know what you need. Here it is. Here's the program. Here's the training. Here's the package. This is what I do, and you're going to benefit from my superior knowledge. That's the tradition. That's the conventional approach. And clearly, it's quite scary to be able to go to somebody who needs something and to tell them, I don't know what you need and how to actually get you the solution. But together we can figure it out. So that is a very scary thing to do because we don't know how to do that, how to actually let go of our own egos and our own vanity and our own sense of security to actually go to people and say, look, I've got a few ideas, but I really don't know what it is that you need. So until I listen to you, I'm not going to be able to provide the solution. And that's scary because people are expecting you to come in, you're the expert, you know everything. You come in, you tell them, this is what consultants do. They have a set of skills and they sell you their solution. A regenerative leader does not do that because a regenerative leader knows that the solution is within the people in that group, in that organization, in that community, not in the regenerative leader. The regenerative leader is a facilitator of processes to bring people together to have the conversation. This goes back to the traditions in Africa, also in Central America and Guatemala, about where people come together in the public space. So the center of the community, where everybody comes together and they talk. So this idea of the circle of conversation where people come and share their experience, and from there they build the wisdom of that group of people, that community, and from that wisdom come solutions. Also the concerns, also the conflicts. So we need to be able to recreate that kind of forum where we can have this bigger conversation where you are not dismissed because you didn't come with a solution before you even started talking. That system does not work. That approach clearly does not work. So the more radical people are more radical than I am, and I've actually done keynote speeches with people who are in regenerative business. They say my framework is not good enough because no frameworks can work. And I agree. The framework doesn't work. It's not in itself. It only proposes a few ideas. The more radical people, when they do consulting in business, they go in with no agenda. They go in order to listen to everybody. And until they do that, they don't formulate any solutions. In fact, they don't even formulate solutions. They help people formulate their own solutions. So if you're not dying because you've been shot or you're dying of hunger, well, obviously you need a doctor or somebody to provide food and water, or you're not running from violence. Anybody else is in a position and has the power to make change happen by themselves with the help of others who might have more skills or resources and some tools, but the solution does not come from outside. And that's the essence of this project. How do you, and that's why I emphasize in the outline the leadership process, how are you going to make this happen? And so a couple of things that I'll share here again. Get back to, yeah, here we go. I don't know if you're familiar. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. I upgraded my computer last night and my cursor is working a little crazy. So are you familiar with appreciative inquiry and David Cooperrider? So if you're not, I'd recommend doing a bit of reading on David Cooperrider. Now, obviously, this presentation is in week 3 and the recording's there. So David Cooperrider discovered that very often this is how we approach problems. So problem solving is there's a problem, there's a need, somebody needs something, we analyze why this is happening, we design solutions, we plan actions, and we treat the problem. And here's the assumption mentally is that organizations are a problem to be solved. This doesn't work. Why? Because this fragments reality. We find a problem, we solve the problem, and very often we create 3 new problems or more. So David Cooperrider discovered that if we do appreciative inquiry, we can change completely how we do things. So, for example, ever since young people, they're not a problem. Rather than a problem to be solved, they're a mystery to be embraced. Can you see the shift in mindset? If we can see young people as not a problem or problematic, as a mystery, we can appreciate them where they are. Who are they? What are they? And with that conceptualization, we can then together say, what could we create here together? Hi, Sharuk, welcome. And in that dialogue with them, we can ask them, what should you become? What do you want to become? And that's looking and appreciating them where they are and considering them as the mystery of themselves, which we can build on and they can build on. And that shifts the mindset completely away from solving a problem to appreciating reality, finding our strength and building on our strengths and our dreams, not on solving a problem. So as we move further, and again, these are all self-explanatory, we move away from linear thinking, and this is the critical piece of the design of the solution. We move away from this linear mindset where we have a client who hires an architect, who then hires a contractor, who then hires other people. And this linear model, a rational model of design, is where we create all these unintended consequences. Your design should consider to be regenerative. Everybody comes to the design table at the beginning. So before you create any solution, you have a conversation with everybody, as Everson was asking, the beneficiaries, but then again, even the unborn or the natural environment, they're all part of your conversation. And they should all be there, whether physically or mentally, because you've included them in how they come to the table. And then here are some examples in education and business. And again, I'm not going to go through these because they're all in the presentation. community, and then the project itself. So again, I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is what I'm proposing that you need to do before you get into the cycle of improvement, which you can do, obviously, and this is strategic planning and all the rest of it. This is step one. What's the question that you need to ask in that environment? So what's the most important change you, the group, want to make? And the second question is, how do we get everybody committed to making that change happen? But you still need to start here. You don't present a plan, you present a question. Does that make sense? So that for you, what you need to do is, what's the question? So think about that. You don't need to answer here, it's rhetorical. So what's the question you want to ask, or questions, because there may be multiple questions, but in Shiruk's case, in mental or healthcare space, in her challenging context, what's the question? And the answer that comes back to you from the group, from the community, whether they're physically present or whether you are giving them a voice in your head, is going to be the right answer. And you can have multiple answers, maybe. And from those multiple answers, which are the ones that are most urgent, most frequent, most important? And you'll be able to rank those answers in such a way that you'll say, the first thing we need to do to get everybody engaged is answer this question. Because that will be the question or the answer to the question that involves the greater number of stakeholders. But you can't do that coming in with a prefixed agenda where you tell people, this is your problem, this is what we need to do, this is how you're going to do it. That does not work. And it's scary. Again, it's scary to be standing on that precipice saying, I don't know the solution, but I know that together we can figure it out. And that's the first thing we need to overcome, is that fear of exposure, of exposing ourselves to others by saying, I don't know. It's very hard to do. And yet, if you don't do it, inevitably, you're going to try and bring in a solution or a proposal before you have even heard what people want or need. And that's not good. And that's why I encourage you, as we move on, to think about who do you involve first. So start with, for example, Everson was saying about some people he knows, or Joe and Shiruk, I'm sure you know some people. But also, can you have a conversation with one or two of the young people you want to help, Everson, before you go to the bigger group? Can you sound them out? Can you get a sense of your audience so that you know how to facilitate the conversation? You know what to expect, so that you're not going in blind. You're going in with more knowledge about what is going to happen, what's likely to happen, or what questions they're going to ask, or what they're going to expect. So if you can have a small group, and you might include people here who are outside of your organization, in order to get a good sense of where you think the conversation is going to go. That will give you more confidence. So think about each of your contexts, how you do that. And then, of course, you involve your external stakeholders, the community, your beneficiaries, the externalities, those people who are not even close to what you do. And of course, as we were saying before, the unborn and the natural environment, the animals and the birds and the bees. And this is the process. I'm not going to read this, but this is for a recommendation about how to go about it. Start small. If you're in a company or an organization, get your boss to support you. Even if you're not going to be doing anything, make sure they're aware. Don't do anything that it's going to have a backlash. You don't want these boomerangs coming back at you because you've been undermining the organization and saying, this organization is obsolete, we've got to change everything. You don't want to have that conversation without other people knowing. So you need to start a conversation with a small group of people, 1, 2 people, and build from there. And get your people to go out and meet other people. So begin extending your constituency, your group, your team, by getting them involved in also practicing generative dialogue with other people. Because it's not going to be scary just for you, it's going to be scary for everybody that works with you. And that's where you can develop, once you've done that listening, that's where you develop that case for change. This is your theory of action. Now that you understand what is going on, and you're not treating it as a problem, but you're appreciating that this is a mystery to be solved, now together we can figure out where we want to go and how we're going to get there. And that's where you design the process. And the final thing, this one is about systems thinking and how we are incapable really of sensing systems. We think about systems, but we can't, it's very difficult for us to really understand everything that happens with every decision we make. So I would recommend doing a deeper dive into systems thinking and everything that it implies, so that when you do have those conversations, make those decisions, you are considering all of the potential impacts of the decisions you make and the actions you will take. And that actually concludes the presentation for this week. So just touch on some of the topics. So do you all have some at least idea as to what you want to do for the project? I know Sharuk does. So Sharuk, do you want to answer that?
I'm so sorry for being late today.
It's okay,
First
that's
of
right.
all, I think there was like a misunderstanding for the timetable at my schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing something related to workforce retention. Now
Okay.
I will start thinking about what the question should be. The main idea that was
Mhm.
challenging for conflict affected areas or context, and how healthcare system get affected, especially related to workforce retention.
Okay.
So yeah, now I will start thinking what the question, and I'll start looking if I can reach many of my colleagues and friends
Mhm.
there to hear from them, because I know even during the 6 months when I left Syria, many things escalated. So I have to ask them about the updated challenges,
Mm.
and maybe how they prioritize their needs, and I
Mhm.
will reshape the idea of my project till now.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. I don't want to see this wonderful project with a 5-year plan and all the desired result. What I want to see is a process where you actually engage people. And really, the big question is, what's the most important thing for you now? And you obviously, as a headline, you can say with workforce retention, with provision of healthcare, with mental health services, with providing jobs, with building new, I mean, reconstruction. I mean, Syria, there's parts of Syria, I'm sure, is going to have to be rebuilt.
Yeah.
Can you rebuild cities that are regenerative and not based on the old model? And how do you do that if the architects don't think that way? And the business are just going in to make money, and so they're getting all of this a lot of money in order to go in and create their own wealth, or I don't know what natural resources Syria has, and to exploit Syria for its natural resources rather than create something regenerative to help the community stay where they are, and everybody who's been displaced from Syria to be able to go back and live lives of purpose and meaning. So the question basically for everybody is sit down with people and say, what's the most important thing we should be discussing today? The plan will come from there, from that conversation. And if you've got 15 ideas coming back, you will need to figure out, well, of the 15, which is the top priority, which is number 2, number 3, number 4, and why? And that's where you're going to see the top priority question, answer to the question is going to come from the greatest number of people, because that's the will of the people. If you do something different, like, oh, let's build a statue to somebody in the main square of the city, because that's the person that thought that was the most important thing, it's probable that that's not really the most valuable thing you should be thinking about and doing. But if it comes from you, you might you might get it right, but it's quite likely that you won't get it right. That you'll be thinking about what you think is right and important, but everybody else may not agree. It may not be real for them or true for them. So how do you do that? By asking the question. And you have to trust that they will trust you to not know the answer. That's the scary part. That's where you got to step out into the void and take that risk, knowing that there's no other way to do this. So are you willing to take that risk? And with whom? Because again, you should not be taking that risk with people that scare you. You should be taking the risk with people you trust who trust you first. That's that small initial group who will, once you get that shared purpose, you'll be willing to ask the question again in a bigger context with people who might not be quite as much aligned as you are to the principles of regeneration. And hopefully that makes sense because it's now 11:10 almost, and we've got to stop here. Any other questions from any of you or comments? I'll be emailing anyway, sort of summary. Go ahead, Joe.
Right, thank you. And I wanted to share like a tool that is somewhat similar to what we've been discussing today.
Sure.
I think it's called an Innovators Campus. So
Innovative
hopefully,
Campus?
yes, Innovators Campus.
Okay. A
Yeah, so
compass.
hopefully, yes.
Okay.
So yeah, it's usually used with like the intended beneficiaries when you're trying to design a project or an initiative.
Okay.
So hopefully, you find it useful. I hope so.
I'm actually looking for it right now. Hang on. Innovative Campus. In sustainability, we have a compass that we use. We'll be talking about that next week, which is north, south, east, and west. So there's the compass. North is about the natural environment. West is about well-being. East is about the economic environment. The S of South is about the social environment. And all the three actually converge on the W West, which is well-being. So that's part of the framework actually from sustainability, but innovative compass. Innovative Compass Consulting. Is that correct, Joe?
I'm not sure, but it's just called Innovated Campus.
Yeah, hang on. Let me share my screen just to make sure I got the right. This could be something we might bring in the future. So here, oh, here it is. Innovators Compass. This one.
Yeah,
Can you see it?
yes, that's the one.
These
Yes.
okay. Right. Good. Yep. I'll certainly take a look at this, and if it's relevant, we'll bring it back in. Why not? Thank you for that. Always looking for new resources. So there's always things moving forward. And in week 3, I've put some of those resources that you can browse, and if they're relevant to you, fine. And as I say always, if you don't find what you're looking for, reach out to me, and we can do some research as to what you're interested in, the topic you're interested in, to see if we can find things that have regenerative implications, but more closer to the work that you do. All right. So thank you for that. And thank you for joining us, whether early, late, or never. I'll be sending the recording out soon. So continue working. Reach out at any time. And I hope you enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank you guys. Thank you. Thank you for being here.